Karen's laugh was a chainsaw ripping through the quiet Texas dusk, her floral dress straining as she sneered at the crowd. "You yokels think you can stop progress," she barked, her chins wobbling with smug certainty. The muddy floodplain stretched behind her, dotted with half-built homes, 110 of them, thrown up in defiance of warnings, permits, and plain common sense. She'd bullied her way onto this land, my land, claiming her HOA empire would civilize our sleepy town of Willow Creek. But the river, swollen and vengeful, was about to teach her a lesson no lawyer could undo. It started 6 months ago when Karen waddled into town, her Cadillac kicking up dust on our dirt roads. She called herself a visionary developer, but all I saw was a woman who mistook volume for authority. At the town hall meeting, she waved forged documents, claiming she'd bought my 200-acre plot from a shady online auction. My family had owned that land since the Civil War, passed down through generations of sweat and stubbornness. I stood up, my voice shaking, and said, "Ma'am, that's my home. I never sold it." She laughed, her eyes glinting with disdain. "Prove it, cowboy," she said, and the room went silent. That was the moment I knew she wasn't just greedy, she was cruel. Karen didn't waste time. By spring, her crew was hammering stakes into my soil, ignoring my protests and the surveyor's reports about the floodplain. The locals, good folks who'd known my family for decades, tried to reason with her. Old man Tucker, who'd fished the river since he was a boy, warned her about the floods that came every decade like clockwork. "That river don't care about your blueprints," he said, leaning on his cane. Karen rolled her eyes, called him senile, and told her workers to keep building. She had big plans, a gated community with cookie-cutter homes, a clubhouse, and a golf course she swore would put Willow Creek on the map. Never mind that the map showed a flood zone. I hired a lawyer, a quiet guy named Sam who worked out of a strip mall in Austin. He dug into Karen's paperwork and found a trail of lies, forged signatures, doctored deeds, and a shell company that led nowhere. But Karen had money, connections, and a knack for stalling. She'd show up at court hearings in furs and diamonds, smirking as her high-priced attorneys buried us in motions. "You'll be bankrupt before I break ground," she told me once, sipping a latte outside the courthouse. I wanted to hate her, but all I felt was a slow burn of injustice. This wasn't just about my land, it was about every underdog she'd ever steamrolled. By summer, the homes were up, shoddily built and overpriced. Karen's billboards screamed luxury living, while the foundations cracked and the pipes leaked. She'd sold 30 houses to desperate families, folks who didn't know the river's history or her scams. I met one buyer, Maria, a single mom who'd sunk her life savings into a deposit. She said it was a steal. Maria told me, tears in her eyes. "Now my kids sleep in a house that shakes when the wind blows." I promised her I'd fight. But Karen's HOA was a fortress. She slapped liens on anyone who complained, silenced critics with lawsuits, and banned troublemakers from her community meetings. The woman was a dictator in polyester. The turning point came in August, when the rain started. Texas summers are brutal, but this was biblical days of downpour that turned the river into a beast. I stood on my porch, watching the water creep closer to Karen's development. She was there, too, strutting through the mud in heels, yelling at her contractors to fix it. Fix what? The river. The arrogance. Tucker hobbled over, his face grim. "Told you, lady," he said. "You built on borrowed time." Karen shoved past him, muttering about ignorant hicks. and drove off in her Cadillac. That night, the river answered. It wasn't a trick light, it was a roar. The water tore through the floodplain, swallowing Karen's homes like they were toys. Roofs caved, walls buckled, and street signs floated away like driftwood. By dawn, all 110 houses were gone, reduced to splintered wood and sodden dreams. I drove to the site, my heart heavy for Maria and the others who'd lost everything. Karen was there, standing in the wreckage, her dress soaked and her face pale. For once, she wasn't shouting. She just stared as the river carried away her empire. Piece by piece, the locals gathered, a small crowd of 5 or 6, their faces a mix of anger and pity. Maria was there, clutching a soggy photo of her kids. "You did this," she said, her voice breaking. "You lied to us." Karen opened her mouth, maybe to argue, but no words came. Sam, my lawyer, arrived with a sheriff and a stack of papers, arrest warrants for fraud, forgery, and reckless endangerment. The sheriff cuffed her, and for the first time, Karen looked small. "This isn't my fault," she wailed as they led her away. The river. But the river didn't care about her excuses, and neither did we. The aftermath was brutal. Families like Maria's were left homeless, their savings gone. The town rallied, offering shelter and food, but the scars would last. I worked with Sam to sue Karen's company, hoping to recover something for the victims. The courts froze her assets, but her accounts were already drained, funneled to offshore banks. Sam suspected. Karen faced years in prison, but that didn't rebuild the homes or heal the trust she'd shattered. At her trial, she tried her old tricks, blaming everyone but herself. The judge wasn't buying it. "You built on greed," he said, "and it washed you away." I walked my land the next week, the mud still soft under my boots. The river had retreated, leaving behind a quiet that felt like justice. Tucker joined me, his cane sinking into the earth. "She thought she could bully nature," he said, shaking his head. "Same way she bullied us." I nodded, thinking of Maria, of the families starting over, of the land that had endured worse than Karen and would endure again. We'd rebuild, not with billboards or lies, but with roots deep enough to weather any storm. Karen's story spread, a cautionary tale whispered in diners and posted on X. Some called it karma, others divine wrath. I didn't care what they called it, I just wanted my land back. And for folks like Maria to have a chance to rebuild. The river had spoken, loud and clear. And for once, Karen had no comeback. As I stood there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt the weight of generations behind me. This land wasn't just mine. It was ours. And no one, not even Karen, could take that away. The end.